Welcome one more time to We Are Data. Today I have the privilege to talk to Rory Smith, the man, the legend, one of the characters that I've been trying to interview for a long time since I joined Timextender. Rory is a well-recognized member of our partner community. So I'm super excited to have this interview with you, Rory. Rory, welcome to the interview.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, delighted. So I suppose we should start with who you are a little bit. So if you could basically walk me through how did you end up in the wonderful world of data as a whole, of course, and where are you from? And, what was your journey from A to B, so to say?
Yeah. Well, my name's Rory Smith, and depending on, so there are two spellings, the easy one and the Gaelic one.
All right. Okay.
Gaelic takes 8 letters to say Rory, and English or Dutch 4. So I'm a bilingual person. My father is Scottish. My mother is Dutch. I grew up in Haarlem, still one of the most beautiful towns in the Netherlands, next to Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. I've always been interested in computing. I think when I was in primary school, I wanted to study both math and computer science and become a computer game programmer.
Wow. So what was your first computer, if you don't mind me asking?
My dad got an 80286 or an AT.
Wow. Okay.
I think when I was 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. So that. Born in 1979, so early 80s, and I think actually my first exposure to computers was one of my friend's Commodore 64s.
Yeah, classic. Yeah, okay.
with the tape drive. So I always wanted to do things with computers, and because we had one at home, I was able to play around with them a lot. We got a modem very early on, so I knew what the internet was before a lot of other people did. My father used to collect IP addresses. Back in the day, there were only very few, so he was very interested in the system behind DNS names and the numbers that they're connected to. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, he realized when he reached about 100,000. And it was growing exponentially that it wasn't a viable hobby anymore. So I went to the gymnasium in Haarlem. So I also got Latin and Greek, or took that. One of the nice things about that school was that we had lessons on Saturday morning, mm-hmm. which they don't do any longer, which was always very strange to other people. And I ended up going to Delft to university. So I started doing computer science, and I moved to something more applied called media and knowledge engineering later on. And during my studies, I started working at a policy research company. They were looking for people to do sort of technical stuff. And that got me into programming transport models, so trying mm-hmm. to predict how much tons of a certain product would be moving from A to B in the world and through Europe, and I did that for about 10 years. So pulling data from European systems or national systems, consolidating this into a sort of modeled data warehouse. So I programmed mm-hmm. my own mini Timextender. If only I had been able to use Timextender, life would have been simpler back then. And then that data was used to do predictions on what the world of transport and mobility would look like in the future. And this was then used by the European Commission to support their policy work. So
you mentioned when we were talking right before this, you mentioned that this model is still in use in the European Union.
Yeah. So I know that one of the models, or at least the output from it, is still being used, because I very occasionally get questions about my own source code. So we managed to open source all the code because we weren't using any commercial product. So what's always been important to me is to get other people, to be able to use these tools to their own benefit, whatever it may be. So I guess that part of my career, that legacy is still something I'm really proud and happy of. The process could just have been a little bit smoother, I think. Although I learned a lot of very useful skills, developing our own sort of ETL tool. But sometimes somebody else invented the wheel already. You should just be able to reuse that wheel.
No pain, no gain, though.
True. So and so I did that for 10 years. At the start, we were also doing Qlik benchmarking in the Dutch market. So I was quite used to playing around with data and making the data conform to a structure that's usable for reporting. And a recruiter found my profile and suggested that maybe e-mergo in Delft would be a good fit for me. And I was actually at the point where I realized that moving somewhere else might be a good thing. So I went over there, had a nice interview, and started working at e-mergo, doing at the time Qlik and complex ETL, including SSIS. And very quickly, I think I joined in the summer of 2016, and around then there was a Qlik conference in the US. e-mergo met Timextender and decided, this fits with what we as e-mergo want to do, to try and automate as much as possible, because you can only get so many skilled people, but if the software can do the work for you, you can achieve a lot more. So I checked my calendar, and I saw that my first Timextender training was in October of 2016. And really from then, Timextender very quickly took control of my my work schedule. So now I full-time work in and with Timextender to help our clients achieve what they want to achieve.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So it's been 6 years. You've been with e-mergo 6 years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing.
Yeah. Almost.
Almost. It's gonna get there. Yeah. You talked briefly about e-mergo in terms of how you joined, but so if you can speak of what's the philosophy, what's the vibe when you work in e-mergo? How do you guys approach your projects, your customers?
Yeah. So we're about 65 people. So we've been growing quite rapidly, quite continuously since I've been around. When I joined, there were about, I think I was number 28, something like that. So we've really been growing. Mm-hmm. Our philosophy is that you can grow using human beings to do things, but that only gets you so far. So using modern systems to automate as much as possible and to make you capable of doing more and more with the small amount of time you have is what we want to do. And what we really like doing is helping our customers help themselves. And that's why tools like Timextender, which abstract away all the complexity of dealing with the low-level stuff, are great, because the learning curve becomes a bit flatter. So obviously there's still complexity left in your business processes and your data, but you can focus on that instead of focusing on how do I set up the hardware and there's a new version of some software, what nightmare have I gotten into now? So we do a number of different product lines. So data management is one, which we do with Timextender. Analytics is another, which we do with Qlik and Power BI. And we also do low code with Power Apps and Mendix. And then there's also data strategy. So that's really the human element. So how do you fit these tools and use them in such a way that you're able to go from just a company operating on gut feel to one that's fully data driven and where decisions are built on real information.
All right.
Yeah, so we're always looking for tools that lower the threshold and that make it possible for people to achieve things without needing to be, the most skilled person on the planet. Because even in today's world where everybody knows how to work with computing devices and everybody touches data, still the people who are really skilled at that are scarce.
Every company is a data company these days anyway. So,
yeah. Well, even every person.
Every person, yeah, we are data. So, but you touched actually in data strategy as one of the pillars of e-mergo, of course. I'm just curious to understand if there are synergies, and I will imagine that they are between countries, if you like, in terms of what are the difficulties that customers are facing, and if the problems can be solved in similar manner. So what are the things that you are exposed, or what are the type of problems that your customers come to you forward and say, hey, I don't know what to do with this specific bucket?
Yeah, so what you see nowadays is that every company is, somewhere in the spectrum of completely no data awareness at all into very data driven, very organized and more formalized. So there's kind of a gradation from things that are implicit. So, the CEO just feels in his gut that a certain thing needs to be done, to completely explicit. So you could just say, well, this KPI has that value, that one has that value, the change has been this, so we must do X, Y, and Z. And so depending on where organizations are, they will have different types of questions. So it might be, we want to know where we are now. And we want to know that for one or two processes we have. So then you can maybe start with, building something like a dashboard or a report based on very simple, small data set, just to get a feel for how your processes register information and how the processes work in a formal sense. Then, once you have that, that usually kickstarts a process where you want, more. So every business process must be mapped. You want to know the now and the last year. So that's where usually something like a data management platform comes up. At a certain point, you're also going to look at, next quarter, next year. So then you need different kind of data put in. You might need to, revisit all your reports and dashboards to make them all kind of work from the same common structure. And then there's different branches you can go to: predictive analytics, advanced analytics, maybe machine learning, depending on the business you're in. Usually you have business processes that are not fully supported by your ERP. So you want some little app that allows your employees to register, their petrol acquisition and get compensated for that. So then you have a low code app you add in. Maybe you want some system in your organization to be able to tap into your data. Maybe you just acquired a new company with their own different set of software and data, and you need to ingest that. So things become more larger, more comprehensive, and therefore also more complex, which means that tools that automate as much as possible and lower the barrier to entry become more and more important, because then you can do it with people who understand the processes. Maybe they're not a SQL Server expert, but they do know really well how the business in practice works, and then they, as long as the tool they're using makes it easy to interact with the data, they can still help themselves. And then we come in, and depending on where they are and where they want to go, we help them on that journey to data nirvana, I think Heine once called it.
Yes.
So it's also a continuous process. I think in the past you would see organizations do a project. So they would say, well, we're going to build a data warehouse. It's a project. When it's done, it's done. And then, 50 years later, maybe we'll do a version 2. And now organizations are realizing that it's just a continuous cycle. The business demands that come so quickly, you need to have the capability to respond and produce what's required, because otherwise the business will just do it themselves.
Right.
So there's kind of this balance between something that's official and controlled and managed and governed, and something that's experimental and driven by local parts of the business. And then you want this kind of cycle that allows these experiments to be ingested in the bigger standardized thing.
Amazing. Thank you. So on the basis, you touched in so many technologies now, but obviously, there is this machine learning. When people hear machine learning, they think something very abstract, very complex. Or when you listen to IoT, at least me, I'm not the most technical person or the most technical tool in the box, to be honest. So even though I work for Timextender, I'm not necessarily a coder. So from the technologies that you are seeing right now, right? There's plenty of talks about multiple types of technologies that have impact the way that we work at Timextender. What are the things that you are seeing from your side of things that are more interesting to you in any case?
Well, to me personally, AI and machine learning, I know a bit about what goes on underneath it. So to me, that isn't to me it's fairly obvious, and it sounds a lot more magical than it is in practice. I think there are definitely things going on there that are pure wizardry, but it doesn't excite me as much. What does really excite me is the availability of quite complex and advanced stuff to the general public. So 3D printing is one thing I really like. Okay. So you might have seen the e-mergo logo we 3D printed. So that was done using one way of 3D printing. But that's just something you can buy off the shelf. You can sit at your computer, 3D design an object, print it, and then process it to make it perfect for your needs. In the past, if part of your vacuum cleaner broke, you either bought a new one or went to some obscure store to get a replacement part. Now I could just design a replacement part, print it, and it's probably better than the original was. So that's one thing. And the other is the concept of low-cost computing. So things like Raspberry Pis, just a credit card-sized PC that costs maybe 40 euros. Anybody can learn to do sort of electronics projects around it. There's also a great community. That's really powerful. So I think the combination of pretty advanced technology just becoming almost a commodity, and the fact that there are very enthusiastic people willing to educate other people in their use, that's really great.
Amazing.
So that's what excites me on the tech front. It's more of a hobby thing, but I think you see that because of that, people know more about what's out there and which tools might be good for their problems, which means that people also can make better choices in the professional scene as well.
Yeah. When you say 3D printers, the first thing that came to mind is a spaceship going through Mars, settling down there with a 3D printer and building a community. That's the thing that came to mind. And I read an article the other day about that, and it makes a lot of sense actually. I'm a big fan of space technology, but obviously it comes from Earth, and one of them is 3D printing.
Yeah, I mean these are. I think it began with the idea of a printer that was capable of printing other printers. The RepRap project, which from a philosophical standpoint is pure genius.
Yeah.
And then somebody actually made it work in the real world as well. And that,
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
no, I
Okay.
mean that's where 3D printing started. So
Yeah.
you can build a printer from the parts printed by the printer. My current 3D printer is basically an aluminium frame with 3D printed parts.
Oh, wow. That's
Just
amazing.
made by a very smart Czech company.
Uh-huh.
But just realizing that we as human beings are able to do very advanced things, and then in a later iteration make it so commoditized that almost anybody can acquire this, and also acquire the knowledge of how to use this. That's a great thing. So freedom of information, or being able to learn what you need to learn to solve the problems that you have, that's a great thing. And I like this period in history because all this stuff is happening right now
and accelerating quite quickly, actually. Cool. So I have a couple of more questions, I think, and then we can wrap it up. But I cannot let you go without asking a couple of questions more. So one of them being, what are your goals for this year as Rory, but also as Rory, the guy that managed Timextender at e-mergo. So
I think for us, what we want to do is more standardize our approach to deploying Timextender for and with customers. So I think in the world of BI and data, the processes and the way we run things have not, up until now, weren't as evolved as, say, they were for software engineering. So now you're seeing that things like DevOps and all these things are coming into fruition in this side of things. So what I want to achieve is standardize our approach so that we can, from e-mergo, make a change for better and then deploy it easily to all customers. Also, so that when customers encounter issues, any of our employees can relate to that issue because they understand the framework it exists in. So that's the main focus for now. Working within the world of both on-prem and Azure deployments. Just basically anything that's currently implicit or done by hand, make sure it's as much automatic and reproducible as possible.
Amazing. And second question around the theme of Timextender, what is the best part of the partnership, or from your own perspective, of course?
I think what I've really enjoyed most is just being able to directly converse with people at Timextender, to also get a response quickly. And sometimes that response can be, no, that's not possible. But at least, it's not a monolithic company where you post the question and then 6 months later you get a vague answer, and you're left with an unsatisfactory feeling. So I think the way Timextender interacts with partners is great. When you're a new partner and you're starting up, you get a lot of support. Our local SSPs, like Alex, are great. There's a lot of back and forth discussion and feedback. So that's really, it makes you feel part of a community, which I think is really important, as opposed to just a partner or a vendor, So that's a good thing, I think. And just a great bunch of people to have beer with.
Thank you for that. Then I have a more philosophical question, and I like to ask this question at the end of every interview that I have with all of you. So the question is quite complex, so you can take a minute to think if you need so. The question is, if you had all the money in the world, all the power in the world, all the information, data in the world, what would you do?
Yeah, that's quite a deep one. I think, if I may, I'll tweak it a little bit and split
You can
it
tweak
into two answers. So I think there's a individual side, so me personally, and there's a more group or a world as code side. So let's start with that one first. I think having experienced the world where you didn't have a computer, and if you didn't have a book on the topic in your house, you needed to go to the library and look for it. I think having information on everything available to everyone everywhere, that would be the crown achievement. So if you as a human being run into a problem, whether it's how to tie my shoelaces or how to write an AI to diagnose some problem, that you can find the information, see how other people did it, and help yourself to build a solution. I think that's information is something that you can achieve. I mean, giving everybody infinite time would be nice as well, but that's probably physically impossible. Then on the individual side, I think if I had infinite resources, I would build a house somewhere in the Central Highlands of Scotland with enough shed space for all my hobbies. So my hobby is collecting hobbies, so I would need a lot of space. And just be able to do everything with my own two hands.
That's amazing.
I really enjoy making things, whether it's music or 3D printed stuff or plastic models or software. But it takes a lot of tools and storage space, which is, hard to get by these days. So, and I really like Scotland's landscape. So I would really like to hang out over there. And I changed the side of driving on the road to the right side of
the road. I cannot let you go. You said I collect hobbies. So you mentioned 3D printing, playing music is one of them as well.
Yeah, I play electric guitar. I'm very slowly learning bass guitar, but I'm not very good at that yet. I build guitar effect pedals as well, so electronics is another thing I'm interested in. I build plastic models, so mainly Japanese robots and spaceships, which I then airbrush to look better than just the pure plastic. I like reading books, although that's probably the thing I do least because it's the most time intensive thing. I enjoy the occasional video game. I really enjoy cooking. So building things from scratch is fun. So making pasta just from the raw ingredients is brilliant. I don't use packets or things in bags in my cooking.
That's amazing.
And now in Corona, there's all these new hobbies popping up, like lock picking or I don't know, anything that involves tools or nice machine bits of metal is usually something I like.
Okay, I know who to call then. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast to listen to you, actually. So thank you so much for investing time with me, Rory. You know that we appreciate time at Timextender, so it's your time today. And to everybody listening, I'm not a YouTuber, but I always have to say, if you like what you see, just subscribe. You will find the button. I'm not going to even point. Thank you so much, Rory. Have a great weekend. And
no problem.
Talk to you soon.
Yes.
Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.